Okay, welcome to another edition of the Invisible Hand on the Fireground. Today is episode 19, and with me I have Mark. Mark, I met in FDIC, and we've become good friends, and we see each other now for the last, I don't know, Mark, how many years now? 5 or 6 years, maybe?
Yeah, right around there, sure.
5 or 6 years. And Mark, I have to apologize. I was joking. I know you're a chief up in, gonna have to tell me the department again. I know it's upstate New York, and I can't pronounce your last name. I'm sorry.
Well,
You're gonna have to forgive me on that one.
Mark Szczepanik. I'm past chief of the Lakeview Fire District. We currently recently moved about a year ago, and I'm a member of the Orchard Park Fire Company currently.
Now, I've heard of Orchard Park. I know that's near Buffalo.
You know, it's kind of funny. Our mutual friend Mike Healy, he taught a class there, and I walk in the door for something else. I wasn't in the class, and I said, "Man, that guy sitting there looks just like Mike Healy," you know. And sure enough, you know, it was nice. We went to breakfast. We had a good time.
Yep. So Mike, I love Mike. He's I worked with him in the Rockland Fire Academy, and I did some training there, and it was I really enjoyed working at the Rockland Fire Academy. Mike is just a great guy, and anyway, so yeah, Orchard Park, I believe that's where the Buffalo Bills play, right? Is that where the stadium is?
Yep.
So I take it now, without saying, you're a Bills fan.
Oh, I'm a Bills fan, especially this so far.
Yeah. So anyway, so you know, as the name is implied, I know you kind of got the gist of what's happening here. It's called the Invisible Hand on the Fireground, and you know what we're at here is trying to talk about people in the fire service, even the EMS or even police. You know, Army or whoever has a story that, you know, what was that? You know, after the fire or after the emergency, you say to yourself, like, we shouldn't have survived that. And, you know, we all have, like you just said, we had a little warm up here, and you said that, you know, they happen every day. And I think they do happen every day. And I think that some of the problem is sometimes we just don't recognize it, you know? So I feel very strongly, I don't make any bones about it. I'm very strong in my faith. And I believe that a lot of things happen, and all the good things that happen have always happened as a blessing, as, you know, God looking out for us. And, you know, I've been in a lot of near misses myself. I sometimes I feel now if I'm repeating myself, so I'd have to think of a fresh one. But anyway, yourself, Mark, how long you been in the fire service? You're volunteer, right? It's not paid department, it's volunteer, right?
Probably about 15, 20 years of fire service. EMS since 1988. So what's it, 33 years?
Yeah. You know, EMS, I would imagine being exposed to so much life and death, because you do it more than the firefighters do. I mean, we go to emergencies where, you know, once in a while we have situation where there's, you know, some sort of life and death situation. But with EMS, it's a daily occurrence. And I'm sure in your time in EMS, you must have seen things that you just have to say, what was that all about, you know?
Yeah, I remember when I was new, working, I was probably a 6-month EMT or so, and we had a house fire in the city. We one of the small cities north of Buffalo, and 2 children died. It was a fatal fire, you know, but that was my first, you know, fire fatality and my first child fatality, you know, at the same time. And I can remember pulling up, and we're bringing the stretcher down, and you know, I was scared, you know, nervous. I'm a new guy, and they handed me this dead, burnt kid, you know, and put him on the stretcher, and we left. And you know, we were it as far as EMS, pretty much. You know, the fire did first response. It wasn't like a West Coast thing where they have paramedics on the engines or that. But and off to the hospital we went, and naturally that affected me pretty deeply. I was 21 years old, and I thought about it a lot. And we did the stress debriefing. That was kind of new then. And so fast forward maybe 30 days. Okay. We got a call. It was like 3 a.m. I was sound asleep. And my partner wakes me up. We got a call. We got a maternity call. Woman's having a baby. Right. So I'm getting the passenger seat. I don't even know where we're going. And we get to the house, and I'm walking up the driveway, and I could smell like burnt wood, you know, wet burnt wood. And fast forward a few minutes and I end up delivering the baby, first baby I ever delivered. That was the house next door to the fatal fire that burnt. What I was smelling was the house that burnt a month ago.
Oh, wow.
So it was, kind of flipped me out, a little circle of life right there, backwards, I guess. But it was neat. And I'll never forget it, and that was kind of the first big one I saw. And I kind of recognized it, or at least to me, I felt God was there. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we had another incident years later, actually 3-4 years ago. We talked about it. I was on a podcast with you with Tiger at FDIC, and we had a house fire, a basement fire, and I was the mutual aid chief. I got there, and I started off as the operations chief, and a couple guys went in, and for a couple minutes nobody knew where they were. So finally they popped out the front door, and the house was smoky. There was really no active fire, and so we end up going to Charlie's side. These guys want to go into Charlie's side, make a push. There's a basement fire. The stairs are over here. We're going to go in. And in a go, no go situation, it was kind of on the line, maybe go, somebody's in that house. We would have gone, but something, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It's like, you know what, guys, we're not going in there. And I got a little pushback, it's like, nah, we're not going in. And it wasn't 90 seconds later, you look in the back windows of that seaside and all you see is orange, and there's no doubt in my mind if people went in that house, they would not come out. And they put that fire out, and there was a huge hole in the floor where these guys were going to go in. So it wasn't, you might have went in looking at it, but there was just that voice inside your head, no way. And you got to listen to that stuff.
Mark, it's really incredible that you said that, because I was up in Boston yesterday. I did a great day with Boston. Myself and my friend Jeff were doing some command training with the Boston captains and the lieutenants to become captains. And, and guys, not talking spiritually or anything, just talking about fires in general, how we are when we get together and we talk about things. And how many times I hear that same mantra, like, yeah, we had this job, we had this fire, and it was just a voice or something in my head that said, maybe let's not go there, and I hear it over and over and over again. And myself, I know distinctly there was one time where I was it was a vacant building. We had a lot of vacant buildings where I was when I was a firefighter in the Bronx. And I just distinctly remember this one fire. It was a building that was, there were squatters living there, but it wasn't a rundown type of building. It was just an we call them H type. So it's like a bigger multiple dwelling. And they were kind of like, I want to say hippies. I don't know what the right word is anymore. This was back in the 80s. So they would, they were like kind of leftovers from the Woodstock days, and they had taken over this building as squatters, but it wasn't a bad building. It wasn't like a drug den or anything like that. It was just, they just didn't want to pay the rent, so they just took it over, and the owner walked away from it. So I guess they took their own liberties or whatever to make additions without checking with the city and getting permits and whatnot. So you never really knew what to expect in these buildings, right? And I remember this one time we had a fire, and I guess we were the second truck, so our job is to go above the fire, right? So the whole floor is going front to rear, and we go above, and like always. And I remember crawling, into the living room, and for some reason, I don't know what stopped me, but I just stopped. I don't know if it was a voice or a feeling, but I just decided just to stop for a second. And then no sooner did I stop that I saw the fire right below me. They had cut maybe a 6x6 hole in the floor, and they put a ladder down there. So they made their own sort of duplex apartment, But I mean, and it was one of these things where it was basically lights out. I mean, you had your face piece on. It was the heavy smoke condition and boarded up windows, and it just, but for no other reason, I just stopped. There was no like, no, just had an instinct or whatever it was, just to stop for no reason. And had I just gone another foot, I probably would have crawled right into that hole, right into the fire, right? And I really forgot about that until you just mentioned it. And like you said, these happen all the time. And and until we start maybe giving credit where credit is due, that's why I like the capital H on the hand, because I say it over and over. I feel like we cannot do this job safely or be successful without some kind of intervention from above, whether you want to call it. I don't know. Do you believe in angels? Like I definitely believe in I have a guardian angel. I know we were kind of taught that very early in Catholic school, that we all have a guardian angel, but man,
I don't know. I just believe I'm a God guy. I'm a Christian, and maybe I'm open for anything. And if I have a guardian angel, they've been pretty busy over the years, he or she.
yeah, I've had other incidences. Like I remember, geez, I could just remember off the top of my head. I remember one time we were in New York City in the Greenwich Village. I had just gotten on the fire department, and we got into I don't know, I don't know what we were doing. We were walking down the street, and then there was like this group of like, I want to say 20, a bunch of kids. There was a whole bunch of them. It was just me and my friend. And they were starting trouble, and they saw us, and things were getting a little heated, you know. And next thing you know, we're like being surrounded by this group of 20 guys. And it wasn't going to go well because it was just me and my friend. The next thing you know, we're getting hit with things, and we're trying to now it's like fight or flight, which we were very much outnumbered. It was like being overrun by like if you think like one of these old Western movies, they were just getting overrun in the fort, and we were in some deep trouble here, and out of nowhere, right? Out of nowhere, this woman, she was tremendous. She was this big black woman. She had to, I can't even tell you how big she was. She was bigger than, my friend is 6'3", and she was bigger than him. And she just somehow, a taxi cab pulled up out of nowhere, and the door flings open in between these two cars. She grabs me and my friend. She was big enough to grab me and my friend, takes us, puts her body between, us and these other guys, and throws us into the cab, closes the door, and the cab speeds off. Now you tell me, how does that happen? How does that happen? We were, these guys had weapons. I mean, knives, and it wasn't good. It was, they were looking for trouble. These kids, And,
right.
We could defend ourselves, but there was a group of them, and we were
Right.
totally outnumbered. And she came out of nowhere, and boom. Next thing you know, we're in this cab, and my friend and I just looked at each other like, what just happened?
Right.
What just happened? So, that happens in the fireground, and it happens even in my own civilian life,
Sure does.
And I mean, I remember another time, it was a Sunday night, and I decided to take a walk up to the boulevard. We lived in an apartment house, and there was this main boulevard, and it was like one of my favorite little late night kind of pizza places type of place, and just wanted to go get a slice or something, and normally I would get it and just walk back and eat it back in the house or whatever, and for some reason, don't ask, I've never done this before. I do the same thing. I go up there Sunday night, get what I need to get, and then I walk back. I decided to sit on the benches by the boulevard, just sit there and look at the traffic and look at the subways, train going by. And so it probably delayed me 15 minutes. I probably sat there for 15 minutes. I started walking home. I turn the block. I go down the block, and I see this car, like idling with the car running, like kind of on top of another car, so to speak, like kind of like it crashed into it.
Right.
And I look into the front seat, and there's two people, a woman and a guy, and they're both filled with bullet holes. And she was on, her head was on his lap, and they were both filled with holes. And the problem was on where I lived is that my grandmother and I were probably the last holdouts. It had become a very serious drug, like drug dens. Like there was a lot of drug
Right.
traffic on the block. These South American people, and this was a hit. It was a, they had just a gun. This car came by and shot these people up, and I figured it out that I probably would have walked right into the middle of that. You know, without a doubt, I would have walked right into that. And for some reason, that little delay on the boulevard probably kept me from walking into that. So I mean, those are just two off the top of my head, and I know that carried well into my fire career, where you know get out of situations for some reason for some unbeknownst reason, right? So
Yeah. All the time. And I just watched they had like a mini series on 9/11 for the 20th anniversary using the
yeah, yeah,
two French brothers that did the
yes,
video.
I remember that. Yeah, yep,
And man, my uncle he's a pastor. He talks about 9/11. He says that was straight out of hell. But God was all over that scene. The stories I hear, and like Josephine Harris,
yeah, yep,
Cap, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take her with us, which is anybody would answer, that was anybody's answer, right? And it was just amazing how they were, untouched, and they saw the light up there, and they got her out, and everybody got out. And it was just, to me, that's an amazing story. That's such a epitome of this thing of ours, what we do, and God at work,
yeah. With 9/11, I wasn't working that day. My company did respond, and the lieutenant that was working in my spot, unfortunately, he passed, but the rest of the company survived. And to their credit, they did one of the bravest things, probably the bravest thing that I've ever heard of in the FDNY, is that when they got caught in the first collapse, they stayed with him, and he was in the hole, and he just kept calling up. He was worried about this one Proby firefighter, and they stayed with him. They threw a yellow rope down to him, and they were trying to dig him out. And then the second building collapsed, and they hung in with him the whole time. But you're right about the evil, because you look at some of the pictures of the smoke, and I swear that I see the faces in the smoke of like
Yeah.
diabolical faces. But on the flip side, there were a lot of miracles. I could tell you that I know firsthand. There were two convoys that were coming. One was coming from Queens, and the other one was coming from the Bronx, right? And they had ordered a task force, or a strike team, let's say, of engines, right? That's
Right.
the correct term, strike team. And there were, I believe, 7 engines, right? So multiply 7 times, let's say 5, so it's 35. And then the other 7 engines, that's so altogether 70 firefighters, all right? The first convoy, they got to the tunnel, the foot of the Queens Midtown Tunnel, and the chief there, I forget his name, John, he didn't want to go until everybody was together. And there was one company, I forget the company's number, but they were delayed because one of the guys had forgotten something, or I forget the details, but he delayed them by 15 minutes, right? Okay, so now they get delayed 15 minutes. Then you have in the Bronx, they had one of the engine companies decided that they got ordered to go to the Trade Center, right? But they decided they were supposed to report to a staging area where they were all going to go together as a strike team. And they went on their own, and then the chief called them and said, "Where are you?" He said, "Well, we're almost down there." And you'd think the chief would say, "All right, just go and we'll catch up with you." He said, "No, you come back. We're going to go down together. All of us are going to go down together," right? So They turned around, they came all the way back up, they got with them, and then they went back down. While they were responding, the buildings, both the first, the north, the south tower fell. They would have all been there when the buildings fell down, had they not been delayed on both sides,
Crazy.
right? So there's 70 firefighters right there, right? That probably, would have been right there at the command post had they gotten there like 15 or 20 minutes early, right? Now, my other story, I just found this out because my friend Smith, right? We just call him Smith. He just got out of the building, just barely got out. He was working in a truck company that responded, and they, the engine that was with them didn't get out, right? And the engine company is actually on one of those documentaries. The lieutenant was the brother of the chief that was the first chief that you see in the documentary, right? So his brother was the lieutenant, and they talk about that a lot in that company. Well, the truck company in with them is in the same house. My friend, he just posted this on Facebook, and I know that after 9/11, he kind of disappeared, right? He took it so hard, he just survived. I mean, he literally just got out 2 minutes before the building collapsed. And he had said that in his little post, he finally talked about it because I haven't talked to him in 20 years. I mean, we were great friends, and he just moved to North Carolina, and he's just gone off the radar. And he talks about what had happened was that he had a bad feeling about things were falling off the building, right? So instead of responding with the engine company that he's in the house with, he told his chauffeur to take the truck and park it about 10 blocks away, whatever it was. It was like a real far away. It wasn't like close, but it was far, far away. And they were going to walk to the trade center. But by doing that, that put them on a lower floor, right? So instead, they went into the north tower, right? So instead
Right.
of being up on the, let's say, the 50th floor, wherever they would have been, they were only on the 15th floor. When that order to evacuate came, he was able to get out quickly. And he said that when he got in that one stairwell, it was so cluttered, so backed up, and it might have been with that woman that you're talking about. I forget her name again.
Harris.
Harris. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Mrs. Harris. That might have been the stairwell. So maybe he wasn't on 15. He might have been on 30, let's say. But when he got to 15, it was really jammed up. And he said that someone tapped him on the shoulder. He couldn't turn around. He couldn't find the guy, and said, go over to the other stairway because that one's moving pretty quickly. So he took his company and went to the other stairway. One of the guys from his company didn't go with him. He stayed in that other stairway. He passed. He got caught in the collapse. He went to the other stairway and got out of the building. He doesn't know who that was person that tapped him on the shoulder, but had two things. If he hadn't put the rig 10 blocks away, that would have probably put him higher up in the building. And secondly, if he didn't get that tap on the shoulder, he would have stayed in that stairway, and he would have got caught behind or whoever. He would have definitely succumbed. So, yeah, a lot of tragedy that day, and so many stories. But out of it, you could see God's hand was definitely at work.
Yeah. I like when those stories are shared. I really do. They have to be told. Mrs. Harris or the one you just told. It's just, it's that if you don't believe in miracles before that, after.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think my friend would share this. I mean, I'm not using his name, but
Well, I understand.
he did post it on Facebook, so he does want people to know about it. But I mean, that's the story. And I didn't know this until just this past 9/11 when he finally shared what happened, because I knew something bad had happened, and I knew he almost got caught in the collapse, but I never wanted to ask him about it. And then I guess he felt it's been 20 years that it was time to talk about it. But that was the first time that I heard exactly what happened. And the more you talk to people, the more you hear these stories about some of the stuff that happened on 9/11. My own story was that I was home that morning, And I wasn't scheduled to work. My groups weren't in. And, if I had been working, I don't know, I had plenty of opportunities. I worked in companies, especially in the Special Operations Command, just a year before that or 2 years before that. And all the companies that I worked in didn't survive. And now my engine company had responded and I wasn't working. And the lieutenant that was working was a Vietnam vet. And he was much more slow going than I was. I was a little bit more, maybe not, I wouldn't say I was more aggressive because he was very aggressive. He was older and wiser and I was younger and maybe I thought I would have probably put that fire out. So,
Yeah, right.
that alone probably, but, going down there that day, I still, to this day, I can't get my head around it. I just can't get around it. I know it just passed. I mean, what are we, October? So it feels like it just was a month ago, but that's a tough day, and I remember being home and, you know, hearing it on the radio as I was driving my daughter to school and, going down there and then responding. And I just couldn't believe, I worked down there when I was in college and I just couldn't believe what I saw, so. Yeah, I mean, but, as hard as you say, the diabolical forces were at work, there was a lot of, so many stories of people missing a train, of going, whatever, being, not feeling well that day, decided not to go in, or taking a kid to school. And, I've heard so many of those stories. And it just, it is, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It was probably, I don't know. It was just, it was a rough day. And, a lot of people did survive because of little miracles. Their car wouldn't start. I heard one person told me their car couldn't start. So you just go down the list, of people that could have been there. So anyway, so you said you had some fire stories though, besides the EMS stories. Besides, you
I talked about the house, the fire where, just not letting the guys in. But again, there's so many little things, something you see or pick up on, and you don't even know what it is, like what made me make this decision, that really worked out. And
right.
an EMS thing, it's not, when I got in this business, I remember a paramedic telling me, you might in your career, like, firsthand legitimately save a life, but a lot of times you'll do an intervention that'll stop a series of events that'll save a life, and you'll never know, but it's just your goal is to make things a little bit better for whomever, just a little bit better. And there's calls that, you go on a call for an elderly person that fell and broke their hip. Well, that's a no big deal call to me and you, but that is a huge deal to them. They're immobile, maybe there's nobody to take care of them. And just to be supportive and decent to them and get them through that, I just think that's doing God's work.
Yeah, I agree. You talked about, you never know. I don't think I've ever shared this story, and I don't want to get too far into the details, but it's very interesting how this all transpired. I wrote this. I got the book coming out with fire engineering. We're just in the final edits now, so hopefully it'll be out in April for FDIC, depending on the printer now and whatnot. But one of the stories I talk about where I was not supposed to be working. I was very adamantly, like, I had work to do in my house, right? I was just bought a house. My wife was due to have our first baby in the spring of, I think, she was born in 91. So this is 1990, right? So just bought this house, and I was, when you insulate the attic, Mark, it's a really nasty job. It's got the fiberglass insulation, and it's a dreadful job, because when you're done with it, you have all this fiberglass in your eyes, and you just itch, and it's like I just wanted to get it over with, right? So I was in the middle of this job, and I just wanted to get over with. So my friend in the firehouse was doing some painting. He had a little painting business on the side, because a lot of firefighters, as you know, do other jobs to supplement the income because that's the way it is, right? You just, you really can't kind of sustain some of these places where we live on just a firefighter's salary. So he had a little painting business, and he had this big job to do, right? So he asked everybody in the firehouse to work, and no one would work for him. And he was like really desperate. So he asked me if I would work. And I said to him respectfully, I said, Mike, I said, I can't, I really can't do it because, I want to get this insulation job in my house finished with. I'm sick of it. Just want to get it done with it. And he's like, I really need you to work. No one could do this. And I'm like, I kind of relented, right? So I said, all right, I'll do it. You're the senior guy. I'm the junior guy. I'll work. So it was a day tour, right? So I come into the firehouse, and there was a guy. He was a handful to work with. He was in the other company, and I don't know what it was about him. He just was a really, I don't know, maybe he was struggling with some addictions, and he was just an angry, angry guy, and he was a bit of a bully, right? So I was a junior guy, and as soon as I walked in the door, he's harassing me, right? So anyway, I got annoyed, and instead of fighting with him, I went up to the gym and I started burning off some energy with the weights, right? That was a good way to kind of burn off some energy and get rid of instead of taking it out on him, I took it out on the weights upstairs. And we get a phone alarm for a fire, right? And, report of a fire on the third floor. And I looked at the address. I'm like, oh crap. And I said, we were there just the last set of tours. We had a fire on the third floor. And, I remember it was a corner building, and, the fire was like, the hydrant was dead, and there was problems with water. And the lieutenant, I was with another young guy, and he was very concerned about going above, and he went up and he kind of left us there. And then, once they got water, we went above. So I knew the building, I knew the layout, I knew exactly the layouts, because corner buildings are rough, right? They don't conform to like the norm, right? Where the tenements are usually, the apartments go railroad style front to rear, and these kind of have these kind of cut up apartments, right? So I recognize the address. I'm like, oh wow, we were here last week or last tour. So we get on the rig, and we're second due, which means that we're assigned to go to the floor above. We get to the corner, and I look, and all you see is fire out like 5 windows, right? It was probably 5 or 6 windows of the whole apartment was going front to rear, the whole corner of the building. So we pull up. Now I had a position called the irons, right? That's the force entry firefighter. Now, don't ask me why I did this, right? You talk about this gut feeling. I've never done this, but as soon as I got in the truck, right? Back then we wore boots. I pulled my boots up. Don't ask me why I did this. It was just a phone alarm for fire. There was no indication that we had a fire, but I pulled my boots up. I strapped into my air pack. I had my tools on my lap, right? So now I'm all buttoned up. My air pack's on my back. I have my irons in my hand. My boots are rolled up. I'm like on the edge of my seat now. For no reason. There's no indications that dispatchers weren't saying that there was a confirmed fire. We got to the corner. I looked because I was sitting on the side of where the driver was. And as we got to the corner, I saw nothing but fire out like 5 or 6 windows. So we made the turn. And the officer and the other firefighter were on the other side of the apparatus, right? So as we pulled in, right, the way we pulled in, I was closer to the building, and I just looked up, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, we were here last week, So I jumped off the rig without thinking. I went into the building, and I got to the fire floor, and the fire now was at the door, and the hose line, they're just calling for water. And I told the guys, I said, listen, I'm going to go above, right? So I go above, and I'm by myself. Like, I don't know where my other guys are. but they're not around. So I'm by myself now. I get to the floor above and I get into the door and I put on my mask and I'm crawling in. The heat is, it's unbelievable, right? Because we're on the floor above, and I start going into the apartment, and I thought I heard like a little cough. That's all I heard. So I go into the bedroom, I see a crib, and I reach in and I'm feeling around now, and I thought it was a little tiny doll, but I wrapped it up and there was no sound or anything like that. And I put the I didn't know what it was. I guess it was a baby, right? So I put him in my coat. I got back to the hallway. Now it's like going down a chimney, and I get down and it's a little. The baby was 10 days old, and I passed him off to the police department. They ran him to the hospital, and he was in intensive care, I think, for 2 weeks, and he survived. It turned out that my other part of my team, the chief had ordered them to check for some kind of exposure problem, whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but I didn't get the message. I went the other way. And I always think that if someone else was working, they probably would have not kind of done what I did. And they probably would have followed the other guys into the other building. So anyway,
that's a story.
Survived. What's that?
That's a story for sure. That's
yeah. I've never really told that story, but
headed you down there, and that little cough.
I can't believe I heard it though. I mean,
yeah.
He was only 10 days old. So it turns out we went back, the news was there and they did a story on the news and whatnot. And, we had the mother, she didn't speak a word of it. I wish it was now because I spoke Spanish. I speak Spanish now, but we spoke and she told us that unfortunately that she had to go to the hospital with her other baby because the baby got bit by a rat. That's what she said. And she had to take the other baby. She left the other baby home with a kid that was like 12 years old. So I guess the kid panicked, didn't take the baby with her. And, so anyway, the baby survived. So, these things happen. And, it just happened the way it was supposed to happen. If anybody else, who knows, they might've went into the other building. Who knows what would happen.
We'll never know now, maybe someday,
Yeah.
But
it's kind of sad though. I was thinking about him because the anniversary is coming up. It happened in November, and last November I was wondering. You wonder what happened. Where did maybe I praying that like maybe he's a doctor. And maybe he's gonna.
Yeah.
And I can't find them.
Yeah.
Can't find them, and I got one of the local newspapers involved, and they have a lot of resources, and they couldn't find them. And he thinks that maybe he might have succumbed to the streets. The streets are pretty tough.
Yeah.
Over there, So it's a shame, but you know what? It all happened the way it was supposed to happen.
It always does.
One of the stories I share. Maybe we could finish up with this. This is like one of my favorite stories. I don't know if I ever shared this before. I'm kind of losing track. Maybe I got to start writing these things down now because I don't want to start repeating myself. But, as you're aware, we did a lot of work in South America. Myself and a few guys, we went down and we did a lot of training and donating equipment, air packs, you name it, trucks, hose. So we went down, myself and another chief, this is my friend John, and we did a week of training on forcible entry techniques, right? And anyway, we did this whole thing where we bring the Halligan, the axe, and we teach them how to force the door. After the week of training, this one company was there, Company 30, Treinta, they call it. And we had just organized a fire truck from somewhere up in Vermont. So they sent the fire truck to this firehouse. They got a brand new truck, even though it was 20 years old, but to them it was like brand new. We had given them air packs, bunker gear, and all kinds of equipment, and we trained them, and they were loaded and ready to go, right? So I think it was Palm Sunday. Yeah, it was Palm Sunday. It was probably like 2005, let's say. And the chief calls me from South America, and he's kind of crying. He's like crying tears of joy. He says, "You're not going to believe what just happened, but they had a fire in a house, and the 3 kids were, what they do in South America is they put the kids in the house and they leave them like we do here in America, like you would a pet, because they have to work or whatever they're doing. They have to go
Right.
out and shop, and they don't have anyone to watch the kids, so they just lock the door and they keep them in the kid, hope for the best, keep them inside their bedrooms or whatever. They had a fire. The firefighters showed up. They forced the door. They put on the air packs. They went in, rescued the 3 kids, and brought them out. And probably what would have happened had they not had the new equipment and the training and whatnot, they probably would have just showed up and taken the hose line and put it in the window and just hope for the best, And, it was nothing short of a miracle that these kids survived, because just even 2 weeks prior, they wouldn't even had that training on how to open the door or had the tools or the equipment.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I'm kind of like on this show, I'm always talking about the near-death experiences that we've avoided, and I've never really talked about the lives that we've been saving. But these are like 2 stories, and I feel, even though like I didn't do the rescue, I feel like that what we did, my group of the Mutual Aid Americas at the time, the nonprofit that we had, having the done the donations and the training, was far-reaching tentacles. They train now. Now they're at the point now where I'm really happy to say that I look at this fire department and they, wow. I mean, I can't even describe the pride that I feel. In Spanish, they say orgulloso, right? Orgulloso. Oh, can't pronounce it now. I can't pronounce your last name. I can't pronounce orgulloso. I'm going to edit that out. But anyway, I feel the pride. Yeah. And I'm going to edit this stuff out. So anyway, say thanks, Mark, for being here today on the Invisible Hand on a Fireground. And until next time, we'll see you again. Be safe.